We talked to Johnny yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, and he said like if you're the Maple Leafs, you kind of need a GM within 10 days. Is that possible time frame? Because it's almost what's needed, isn't it?
It's possible, and I would agree. It's what's needed. And as I reported last night on Insider Trading, I know they've engaged with Brad Treliving. It doesn't mean that Treliving is where they begin and where they end. I mean, it's possible, but it feels like Shanahan and company who's ever involved in this process of interviewing is likely going to want to include a couple of candidates or more, unless they feel like Brad is the one and only, and then you close on it sooner rather than later. So the timeline on it is sketchy at best. I was told the other day it would be a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, but Shanahan made it pretty specific in his email last Friday what he was looking for. And, I don't think Toronto has any interest in, I know they don't, going into, even what Calgary went through. Calgary knew they had a grade A candidate in Craig Conroy in-house, but they felt like it was important to go external and talk to as many guys as they wanted. They ended up, landing on one of them, Dave Nonis, who interviewed for the position of general manager. So maybe Shanahan and the Leafs, extend it a little bit, but at this point, it kind of feels like it's Treliving's job to lose.
I'm just speculating here, Dregs, but we just had a long conversation in Jerry's percentage about the core four coming back. And then you and Bryan just laid out Vegas being absolutely ruthless with players, with top-tier coaches. Top tier. Like Peter DeBoer is a top-tier coach. No, sorry, Bruce Cassidy is available. Gerard Gallant out the door because, there's
Jamie,
a reason.
Brian's words were the Leafs couldn't stomach doing something like that. That's what you said with your croissant.
That's exactly what's been happening for years. They couldn't stomach change. That's why nothing happened. Right?
I'm just saying, this
Great
is...
croissant.
But it's more about... You look at these two, and McPhee and McCrimmon both have been managers in the league, and they are, great hockey people, but they've got a mandate, and the mandate is, hey, if you're not on board, you're turning over. They've turned over top players as well, and believe me, Nick Suzuki, Alex Tuck, those are players that you had to move out to have the team that you have. They took a flyer, and I'm sure flyer's the wrong word, but Jack Eichel, we weren't sure if Jack Eichel was going to be able to play again based on, the medical reports out of Buffalo. So, good on them for being proactive. Yes, at some point it is going to come home where they are going to have to rebuild, where they're missing some prospects and draft picks because they've kind of, sold the farm. But the first 6 years, pretty impressive.
As good as it could be.
Well, look, guys, and let me submit this. And, I will disclose my bias here. I've known Kelly McCrimmon for 30 years, riding buses together back in the day of the Brandon Wheat Kings. He's a sharp, shrewd dude. And I get it. There's a level of arrogance that comes with Kelly, but it's somewhat deserved, even though, his tenure in the NHL has been short-lived. His hockey experience is, it goes way, way back. So, and I say this respectful also of Doug Armstrong, who's a Stanley Cup winning NHL general manager. But we in this market will fixate on this guy or that guy and say, okay, well, this is exactly what the Maple Leafs need. And I mean, I look at Doug Armstrong and I have nothing but respect and appreciation and acknowledgement for what he built in St. Louis. He's got 3 years left on his deal. Why would Tom Stillman, the owner of the St. Louis Blues, cut him loose so he might join the Toronto Maple Leafs? And it might happen. I doubt it, but it might happen. But if we're gunslinging the way that media seems to want to do, and I include myself in that, don't you look at the guys who are super aggressive? And McCrimmon and George McPhee are right at the top of that list. Have to be. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not. Are they interested in leaving Vegas? Obviously not. They're trying to win a Stanley Cup there. The timing of all of this is crazy. But, that's why, honestly, I think Toronto to a point, Brendan Shanahan to a point, are a little bit tied up in this process. And, Brad Treliving isn't a bad option. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a real good, experienced general manager. But if that's what we're looking for, then the board and Brendan Shanahan need to keep their powder dry, because if you're looking at organizations like St. Louis with guys under contract for 3+ years, look around the league, because there's a few of them.
Yeah. Well, and you'd probably have to pay compensation for that, though, wouldn't you, Dregs?
Yeah, I don't know if
You're
that
not
works
allowed to
anymore,
anymore.
Brian. I don't
So
think
you're not allowed
No,
to?
you're not allowed to. I was sniffing
Because the Leafs
around
did
on
that
that.
with Babcock, right?
Well, and wasn't it Brian Burke? It was years ago. There was a deal with.
Oh, it was Pete Chiarelli. Remember when he left Ottawa
That's
to go
right.
to Boston?
There was a compensation, correct?
Yeah,
I see,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Eugene Melnick at the time got his wrist slapped, and I think they gave up a draft pick along the way. So it's not that easy, but I guess if it's doable to do it with a guy like Doug Armstrong, who's got 3 years remaining on his contract, again, with all due respect, I keep repeating myself, there's some gunslingers in the NHL if that's what Toronto wants.
Well, and I did clarify. I was sniffing around on that, going, is there any type of compensation? Because could you do that? And apparently the league clamped down. There's not allowed to do that anymore.
So what you need is the person to
get out of
you
his
need to go to the
contract with
owner. The owner needs to say fine. And once the owner basically says fine, talk to him. The owner's telling you fine. I'm letting him leave if
Let
he
him out of
wants
his
to.
contract.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ostensibly, Shanahan could be calling 20 teams in the league right now, saying, "Hey, can I speak to your guy?"
And look, how difficult is that? And Pierre LeBrun talked about it, and so did I yesterday, because, look, a high-ranking source of the Blues, specific to Armstrong, said, come on, it's fabrication. I'm not crapping on the writing of the people who are speculating on Armstrong and the Maple Leafs. But to the point we've just established here, if Doug Armstrong wants to be general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, then with 3 years remaining, then I think he has to go to his owner and say, look, there wouldn't be a Canadian hockey person that wouldn't covet the job of being general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It would have been the same as the Berkey scenario when he came.
100%. So that's on Doug to go to the owner and say, man, you know where my roots are. And I'm not saying he's going to do that, or, he probably won't. He's president and general manager of the St. Louis Blues. But that has to happen, I think, more than, Larry Tannenbaum or Brendan Shanahan going to Tom Stillman, the owner of the Blues, and saying, we'd like you to consider letting your guy out of his contract. Like, I don't know. This whole thing is fishy.
There's a part of me, though, that wonders, if you're Shanahan, do you really want to go down that road? Because what if that guy goes, yeah, I'll come, but I'm going above you, and you're out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not answering to you. Like,
Right.
I'm willing to, hey, Larry, Bell, Rogers, I'll come up, but I'm not answering to Shanahan.
Yeah, GMN.
Like, Shanahan better be careful with that.
Yeah.
You open the door to a heavy hitter in the league. Why is he going to answer to Brendan Shanahan? Why would he do that?
And I don't get the sense from the people that I talk to that the board or anyone associated above Brendan Shanahan is interested in that. Even through everything that's gone on of late, he has full support and has full trust. Now, let's see how the offseason unfolds, and you got another year looming, and then all bets are off. But right now, that's the sense I get specific to Shanahan.